Hello, everyone. Today, this is the Operator Framework Working Group for OLM. It is November 28th, 2023, and we are having our meeting. Okay, my name is Todd Short. I will be the host today. So, looking at the agenda, we have no outstanding briefs. I know briefs are being worked on, and hopefully next week there'll be something under the brief category. Unless someone has something now. Going once, going twice. Thank you. Okay, we have an RFC. I don't see a name attached to it. Our RFC OLM v1 graph deprecation. There is a lazy consensus date of December 8th, which is a week from Friday. It is also happens to be the first day of Hanukkah. But that is, does anyone have any, is the author here? I don't know who the author is.
I can jump in for that one, Todd. This is
Okay.
Jordan. Hey, we actually just pushed the lazy consensus date out here. With the break, Thanksgiving Day break coming through, we felt like we needed to give the community greater opportunity to look at this one. So we just pushed out the date preemptively to provide an additional review window.
Is the current date here listed current?
That is the current date. Yes, sir.
And just looking at the document, the date is also in the document is December 8th. Okay, great. So if you haven't had an opportunity to, please take a look at that. Old action item checkpoint. There's nothing listed here, and it doesn't look like anything was carried over from okay, well, it looks like there was an action item to cut an operator controller V08.8 release. Did that happen?
I don't believe it did.
Okay, well, let's take a look quickly.
Was it an action or I think we were going to discuss whether we want to do that, but I don't remember whether we actually did decide to cut it.
So I wasn't here for November 21st because it was Thanksgiving week. That being said, it was listed as an action item, but I don't think it was necessarily assigned to anybody. So I don't see anyone's name here.
Did we have a meeting on that date? I think I was all out as well, despite adding an action item for like a discussion topic for that. But okay, I can cut the release. I think I will be cutting a DEPI release anyway for that as well. So I can do that.
Okay, so I will put your name on the checkpoint and also copy it down to here.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'll just actually take your name off that point to say, note that we did not do it and that we will do it moving forward and assign it to you, McLeod. Okay. Right now the discussion topics is blank, so I don't believe we have any. Joe, you have your hand raised.
I do. I was going to ask, I know it's been a while and I haven't been to some of the more recent meetings, but did we make any progress on doing an end-to-end demo of what we currently have? I know, Bryce, I think I saw you working on it because there were some bug fixes going on based on some of the things we were putting together, but I wasn't sure if that was something we were still doing, or maybe I just missed it and it's already been done.
If I remember, it was either the last meeting or the meeting before that I had presented it. So it should be in one of the recordings somewhere.
Awesome.
It looks like, yeah, it looks like it was done on November 14th. Coast to Coast demo of features.
Yeah, that sounds
cool.
about right.
Check it out.
So, okay. Anybody else for any discussion topics? Going once. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to close out another action item, with the merging of the version range docs, I did create a drafts folder in the docs, a drafts subdirectory in the docs folder for that was an action item that Anik had. just for the operator controller.
Okay, so yeah, so the documents version range documentation has been updated in the version controller. I think that was merged earlier today. And so now we have a location for draft documents. Thank you, Michael. Okay, if there's no other discussion topics, we shall move on to the milestone check-in. Okay, let's look at catalog D. No milestones. Anyone have anything or anything to discuss here?
I had closed out the last milestone and didn't create a new one because I wasn't sure if we had anything kind of lined up for catalog D in the near future.
Okay.
But I did create a couple bug fixes. So I'm not sure if maybe we want to do like a patch release or something like that at some point, but I don't know if that necessarily needs a milestone itself.
Okay, so I guess so. Your question, Bryce, is that whether or not we should create a catalog D release?
I guess it can kind of be. I don't know if we have like a standard process in place yet where we're like, after this many bug fixes, we want to cut a patch release, or if it's like determining what bug fixes warrant a patch release, things like that. So
See if I can find catalog D.
My suggestion would be that if we've got commits on main that are reasonable to be in a release, then let's just go ahead and cut another minor. And then we can separately decide whether we want to put those same bug fix commits on a release branch and cut a patch release. So I guess like TLDR, always cut minors every 3 weeks if we've got commits, or if there's some other reason not to. And then also separately decide whether it makes sense to do a backport. In general, I would guess that we don't need to do a backport unless there's a really good reason why.
Joe, just to elaborate on that, is the hesitancy in doing patch releases related to just the amount of overhead it would introduce to the project? Or
I guess the question is like how much is anything going to use the patch release? If someone is saying like, hey, I want a patch release, then sure, like maybe we can do it. If we can cut a 0 dot whatever the next minor is, and we can just consume that in operator controller, for example, and that's the only real consumer, then why go to the extra effort to also put a 0.9.1 or whatever the previous?
yeah, I'm strongly in support of what you're suggesting here, simply because clearly we haven't even done a good job regularly cutting our minor releases and taking on additional release baggage. Seems like it would push us further towards failing to, meet that commitment.
So Bryce, does that give you any opinions on what to do with catalog D next? I don't know where we are in like the minor release cycle for catalog D, whether we want to wait more or whether it's time to cut a release anyway or what.
Looks like, just for notes, the last catalog release was about 2 weeks ago.
yeah, I was gonna just say, I think that there's, like I said, a couple bug fixes. I don't think there's been anything major merged since then, but I don't think it hurts to cut a minor release if that's the process that we want. So I'm happy with doing that.
Okay, so for now, since we're still another week out, what do you think about making the 0.11 milestone and putting those 2 PRs in there just so we can see that that's what's going to be there, and then maybe something else shows up in the meantime, and then around a week from now we can cut another minor. And then again,
Sure.
like if there is a need because operator controller needs some bug fix sooner, then we can also talk about that. But
Okay, yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I can't remember. I think the bug fix that we had might be important as like a full end-to-end thing, because I think if I remember right, the issue that I had fixed was a problem with the catalog was stating it was unpacked, even though it wasn't actually successfully unpacked, due to like a cache miss, or like it missed the cache that the stuff was existing, and then it would pull all the contents, and then something would fail in that process, but the cache entry wasn't cleaned up. So even though it failed, it said it found it in the cache, and it would mark it as unpacked, even though it was not unpacked. So I don't know if that's a fix that we want to make sure gets into the next operator controller release, or if we're comfortable waiting for that to get in whenever it gets in our regular like dependency update cycle and stuff.
I guess my opinion would be like if it was required to get that E2E coast to coast demo to work, then I'd say let's try to get it in. But if not, then it can wait. Does that seem like a fair rubric?
Yeah, it was just, it kind of does like a silent, it kind of fails silently, and gives like a false, hey, this is unpacked. So I ran into that when I was messing with the coast to coast stuff. But once I found that out, I realized that it wasn't an issue. So it's more of like I was just wanting to make sure that we don't want to make sure that this is in for the next release in terms of like user experience. But I'll leave it up to other folks, because I don't think it's something that prevents the full E2E flow from actually being executed. So
Okay, I'd say if it doesn't prevent it from being executed, then I don't think we go to any drastic measures. Let's just handle it like we would any other bug, I think.
okay, cool.
Okay, are we done with catalog D?
I have one quick
Oh
comment
yes,
I just want to
Alex.
close the loop on. So we had just kind of discussed how, like, typically we're always going to push minor releases as opposed to doing patch releases. Do we want to codify this in the release MD just so that our process is somewhat better understood? And we could even call out that like our goal is to move to supporting patch releases once we get to a point where we think people would actually use them. And I know in the past with some of the OLM v0 repos, we had issues where I actually cut a patch release when we probably should have just made it a minor release. So I'd like to, is that something I could take as a to do? Does that make sense to everybody so that it's more, so our release like process is more discoverable to people and it sets expectations?
I think that makes sense, Alex. I think my suggestion, I think it makes sense to update the release docs and say like, here's how we do regular releases. And then also in there, maybe we could say something along the lines of like, anybody in the community can ask for a backport and do a patch release, and then we'll consider those on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, Joe. So I will take that as an action item. I believe we have a very similar release MD for all projects. So perhaps I'll just do the first attempt where I solicit feedback on the operator controller, and then once that gets approved by the community, we can take those same changes and apply it to each of the repos in OLM v1.
Sounds good. Thanks, Alex.
Okay, so I put that down as an action item for Alex. Great. Okay. Someone added a note, I don't know who, I could find out if I really cared, to skip the operator controller. Any objections to skipping the operator controller because the milestone is not current? Or do we want to still have a discussion here?
Seems fine to me.
Yeah, I think we will just cut the release and create a new milestone. So nothing else to
Okay.
discuss, I think.
Okay, and I'll just make a note and new milestone. Okay, great. Let's move on to Deppy.
All right, in DEPI, we have this milestone, which only had one issue, breaking change. I will cut the release, create a new milestone as well.
Okay. Cut Deppy release. That's going to be v0.2.0.
Yep.
And you'll do that?
Yep.
Great. Should be cut. Okay. Anything else on our milestones we'd like to discuss? Anything else we'd like to discuss? Going once, going twice. Okay, great.
I do have a. Sorry,
Who's this?
this is Bryce.
Okay.
I know in one of the previous meetings, in the last week's meeting, I demoed the Catalog D Cube Cuddle plugin that I had shared on Slack, and I remember Joe, you had commented on that Slack message about wanting to come up with like a better strategy, like strategizing how we want to do like a overall like CLI experience. Is that something that I'm sure it's not like high priority, but is that something that we want to like start considering? Because I can kind of write up like an RFC or something like that that we can kind of have those conversations around, or if it's better to just have like some kind of place to have those start those conversations, maybe like a discussion or something.
So I do know that I had written up something months and months ago regarding CLI, just for operator controller, and I know that during one of my recent RFCs that was put aside, Andy had some comments on some of the CLI UX. So I know there has been some discussion in various documents. Joe.
Yeah, so Todd, I remember you did some PRs or maybe just one PR in the kubectl operator plugin that had like an OLM v1 subcommand, and we started putting stuff there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we
something
could,
on those lines.
so we could definitely, and that's all like alpha. I don't remember if we require some environment variable to enable it or whether it's just a different subcommand that's hidden, or I can't remember exactly, but regardless, like that's one place we could just go and start putting stuff that we want to experiment with. Separately, I know we had asked Jordan to think about some of this stuff as well, and this was prior to some of the multi-tenant design stuff that we've also been working on. So I think there's just a lot of different moving parts. But regardless, like yeah, this is definitely something we need to stay on top of.
Right.
So
I
I
think
would suggest touching base with at least Jordan, and if you want to bring me and Andy in, and whoever else is interested, we can try to strategize. Maybe an RFC would be a good start, just to sort of put down on paper all the different things that you have in your head, Bryce.
Okay, that sounds good. I'd like to try to have one place where we can consolidate all of the conversations and keep it all in one place, because Some of the conversations around this, I don't think I caught wind of, so it would definitely be nice to, instead of having to like try to find different places where it all is, to have one. So I can do an RFC that tries to kind of get everything consolidated into that, and thinks of like the overall experience across all of OLMV1 specifically.
So
and
Bryce,
its components.
I was already starting to work on that in that area. I didn't have it congealed as an RFC, just as trying to consolidate. We had several bits of independent input that I was trying to reconcile. It kind of got backburnered with some of the recent activities, but it's still on my list. So why don't we coordinate offline and see if we can work out something.
That's good. Thanks, Jordan.
The last thing I'd say is that I think we have to, well, like we've been talking about multi-tenant scenarios, and a lot of our design right now has like workflows that require or don't require necessarily, but workflows that make things a lot easier if you're using a CLI that we also have as a companion sort of thing with the on cluster design. And those scenarios are captured in our multi-tenant design docs. So we should probably touch base and figure out, how we're going to do that. But I think it makes sense for us to, like, in the context of our multi-tenant stuff, be able to also sketch out and brainstorm what like the combined experiences between the CLI and the uncluster stuff. So we might, I guess my point is, like, we might end up either duplicating stuff or sort of having different pieces of the CLI in different docs. But I think it's going to be hard to figure out exactly what we want to do until we just start doing it, so we can keep talking about it.
Yeah, I think we can. I think we can probably also do it in a way where we build a CLI to provide a good experience with what we have now, and expand it as we have like some of that multi-tenant functionality and other additional features added on. So, yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like to me that there's an action item to start to look into the CLI UX with Bryce and Jordan getting together and taking a lead on that. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, great. Okay, anything else to discuss today? Any other topics people would like to bring up? Okay, so with that being said, is there anyone who would like to host next week's meeting? Volunteers, looking for volunteers.
I can do next week. This is Daniel.
Daniel, okay. I will put Daniel up here on December 5th. Okay, great. Okay, it looks like we are done. Thank you for attending and have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, again.
We can stop recording.